Join us every Wednesday for InFocus, a weekly talk show produced by the St. Kitts Nevis Information Service, where we provide exclusives with key persons within the government and discuss pertinent, relevant, and interesting matters that affect us all. Tune in every Wednesday, live on ZIZ Radio and streamed live on Facebook at SKNIS Media and ZIZ Online. InFocus, your government, your business.
I'm Ian Richards. Welcome to InFocus, a weekly program where we zoom in on what's happening within and throughout the government of St. Kitts and Nevis, your government. The Ministry of Tourism is celebrating November as Tourism Month, Tourism Awareness Month actually, in St. Kitts. Now, during a press conference, the Minister of Tourism, along with other key leaders from the ministry, shared encouraging statistics that highlight the island's impressive recovery post-COVID-19 pandemic. Now, they also outlined plans and initiatives aimed at advancing sustainable development in the tourism sector. Joining us today is the Honourable Minister of Tourism, the Honourable Marsha Henderson, who will provide further insights into the growth strategies for the sector and discuss how everyone can benefit from its continued success. Stay with us as we delve into your government, your business. Welcome back, and thanks for staying with us. And allow me now to welcome back to InFocus the Honourable Marsha Henderson, Minister of Tourism. Minister, welcome. It's always a pleasure to have you.
Always a pleasure being here. Thank you for having me, Ian.
Of course. So, as we mentioned, there's a lot to discuss. It's Tourism Awareness Month.
Yes, it is.
And the question that pops to mind, first thing, is that St. Kitts and Nevis, well, and we're referring specifically to St. Kitts here specifically, of course, as tourism has its own feature in Nevis, their own department, its autonomy there. So St. Kitts has been in tourism for about 20 years now, 2005, right. And Tourism Awareness Month is an annual event. It's in November every year. Some may ask, why is it after 20 years do we still need to have Tourism Awareness Month?
Right, and that's a good question, Ian, because for us, Tourism Awareness Month or Tourism Month, it's more than a celebration of tourism, but we think it's a vital and strategic opportunity for us in the industry to sit together to do an assessment as to where we are, which is why we're calling it Tourism Awareness Month. So it's a good opportunity for us to sit with our stakeholders, determine, celebrate our successes, of course, and build on those successes. It's good for us to sit down and educate, not just stakeholders, visitors, residents, locals, educate them on the successes, the benefits of tourism, and the challenges, and look to see how we can work on those challenges to move the industry forward. So for us, it's more than a celebration of tourism, a hip hip hooray, but a good opportunity for us to sit together and say, hey, this is what we can do better. This is what we need to be targeting. Look at the trends in the industry, see how we can capitalize on them, see how we need to be shifting our focus, because tourism is not static. It's ever changing, it evolves. And so this is a good time for us to sit with our stakeholders and, go back to the drawing board and make our citizens and our visitors aware of the benefits of the industry as well.
Right. Now, the theme for this year's Awareness Month is Tourism for Tomorrow, driven by community, committed to sustainability. What does this theme mean for St. Kitts and Nevis?
Right. For us, we thought it was important at this time to be focusing on community tourism, empowering our communities to empower from tourism. So we are looking at tourism in the future to make sure that in the future the industry continues to serve our communities. In addition to that, the sustainability aspect is to ensure that the practices in the industry continue to be of such that the industry can be resilient If we don't embark on sustainable practices, then we won't have a tourism industry. We won't have a St. Kitts to sell or a St. Kitts to live in. And so we thought it's time for us to focus on the resilience through the sustainability of the industry as well on, and for us sustainability means inclusivity as well, and so it means ensuring that our communities, our people benefit from the industry.
Now, of course, St. Kitts and Nevis, the government is transforming the federation into a sustainable island state.
Right.
Where does tourism fit into that agenda?
Oh, absolutely. We actually signed on to the Glasgow Declaration, and we feel that the industry has to be moving with the government's agenda. And that's not just here in St. Kitts, but that's worldwide. And we, as well, in May of this year, signed the Glasgow Declaration. And that means we are supposed to be putting our climate action plan together to ensure that this industry understands our responsibility in terms of being sustainable and making sure the practices within the industry as well are sustainable. So signing the declaration just meant that we are committed as a country in achieving the government's sustainable agenda as well as the international agenda, because this came out of COP26, that we are to be embarking on sustainable practices within the industry to make sure that tourism as well is sustainable.
Right. Now, before we venture deeper, Minister, into the theme and Tourism Awareness Month itself, I want to talk a bit about a key statistic that was mentioned at the press conference that I referred to earlier. And it highlighted that cruise tourism generates more than $113 million in revenue. Now, that's about 6% of the gross domestic product here in St. Kitts and Nevis. And persons who would have looked at the budget consultation last week would have heard that the budget is, or the GDP, I should say, is around $2.3 billion here. Now, according to the International Monetary Fund, in 2023, the tourism and related industries, which would be transportation, wholesale, and retail, represents about 25% of GDP. Where is the money, Minister, that is generated, the revenue generated from tourism? Where is it being spent and how are the people benefiting?
Right, and if you would permit me, Ian, just to refer to what I call the BREER studies. And this is essentially an economic impact assessment done by our partners at FCCA, that's the Florida Caribbean Cruise Association. And what they did is an assessment on the industry. So they did a breakdown as to how the monies are, the expenditure in the economy in each member state. And for St. Kitts, really at the core of the analysis was the contributions, the economic contributions of cruise tourism, as you asked. And they did this for a period beginning in October 2023 to May 2024. So that's about what, 9 months, Ian, thereabout?
6, I think it's about May, you said May?
October 2023 to May 2024. So that figure represents the expenditure, the money spent in cruise for those months only. And the data they collected were from surveys from passengers and crew during that period. And it shows that, as you said, the $113.1 million spent during that short time was spent. The expenditures, they included categories such as shore excursions, food, and beverages. Now, what was interesting is that the data shows that most of the monies were spent, a lot of the monies were spent on shore excursions, meaning where passengers come off of the ships and they buy a tour, whether it's a beach tour, a tour of our historic sites, or, a walking tour. Most of the monies were spent there. Then onshore, and that's by passengers, onshore expenditures by the crew were generally concentrated in purchases of food and beverages. So they would patronize our supermarkets, local transportation, and retail purchases of clothing. Now, the data also shows that a good amount of monies were spent on watches and jewelry that accounted for 76% of the cruise passenger expenditure. So those are the stores down on Port Zante and wherever else we have them in the hotels, But generally, cruise visitors shop down in the Port Zante area. And so a good amount of the expenditure was spent on watches and jewelry. And that's interesting. It means that we need to ensure that people are staying on our ports. And that's another topic. But most of it, the breakdown showed it was in shore excursions, the jewelry, and it also showed other purchases such as local craft and souvenirs and purchase of liquor. So the money is actually being spent, within the sectors, and as you said earlier, retail sectors, even the supermarkets benefit, local transportation, those on Port Zante, cruise, tour and taximen, tour operators and taximen. So the money, the 113.1 million within that, I think you said 6, I think it's either 6 to 9 months, however long that
7,
is.
it's actually 7.
7 months.
Yes.
113.1 million in 7 months circulating in the economy in those different areas. Just from cruise, not even from stayover passengers.
Right,
yes.
right, okay. That's an important note to make there. So some of the key economic benefits now in tourism, because as you mentioned, this year there's a focus on community tourism, ensuring that the benefits are spread out, that everyone can benefit. Everything is not just centralized.
Right.
Talk to us about some of the key benefits there.
Right. So for us, we feel that we need to decentralize the tourism product. That means, generally if you talk tourism, you think it's Frigate Bay. You think it's the Strip. You think it's Southeast Peninsula. But there's a conscious effort by the government to decentralize the tourism product and make sure that it goes into the communities, the respective communities. And that means that our people, the people who serve in the industry, stand to benefit from the sector. So for example, we have a number of tours. For Tourism Awareness Month, we are putting on a sunset tour that is in the Belmont area. So we're going to go down to Belmont Estate and we're going to recreate the story there. You're familiar with it, Ian?
No, I'm not.
Okay, and then there's Queenie's Well. You're familiar with that one?
I'm familiar with Queenie's Well,
A strong woman who stood up to
yes.
Her boyfriend apparently she
was thrown in the well.
She was thrown in. And these are the things visitors come to our destination for. They come to see who we are, what we eat. So there's a focus on culinary as well, whether it's at Port Zante where we have barbecue, lobsters on the grill, or within the communities where you have the local foods. We feel we need to take and decentralize the product and move it more into the communities and make sure that our people benefit from it. So there's some winemakers in Sandy Point. You can actually go down there. They grow their own fruit and create their wine, and visitors take tours there. Last tourism month, we went there. We saw the plants being grown, the fruit, and then there's the tour as to how the wine is made. Then there's Wax Memories, and I'm not plugging anybody here. But Wax Memories, that's one of our local artisans. They sell candle and other scented things, air fresheners. And you can actually see how that's done. In fact, when we had the State of the Industry conference last week, you were able, if you attended the conference, to make your own candle. And these things are done mostly in the communities. And so our visitors come and they immerse themselves in our culture, our food, our people, our history, our practices. And that is what we think the core of tourism should be.
And so the tour that you mentioned that is being organized, who is it targeting?
Oh, visitors. And of course, we during this month, we are doing it for our locals so that we can understand what the tourism product looks like. All of us are ambassadors, ultimately, of the destination. And so, like I said, this is a month to make our people aware, to educate our people. Tourism Month isn't necessarily for visitors, but it's for our people, our stakeholders, so that we can assess the product, familiarize ourselves with the product, make changes to it, if we need to build on it. So this is a good time this month for our people to participate in the events to see what we sell as a destination.
And it's interesting, as you mentioned, Queenie's Well, there actually was a project a few years ago that was sponsored by UNESCO to restore the well.
Yes.
And so that shows how persons can use their local initiative and gain international funding to present something that would help to advance the culture.
Right. And you're so correct. Right now we have 2 UNESCO sites, the Brimstone Hill as well as the cotton ginnery in K-On. I'm not sure if it's yet certified, but it's on the path to being certified. And we have rich culture and history here. I mean, the other day I went to Old Road with Jack Widdowson to see the product and do an inspection. You know, he invited us down, and I was amazed at what we have on island. So what we want is to put tourism into the communities. And ultimately, that's our goal. And
Widdowson, that would be the estate?
That's Old Road rum.
Okay.
So you go there, you actually see, because remember, after sugar came rum. And another thing we were discussing, just before I came here, I was in a meeting with all the agencies. Hammond. That is how Hammond came about, you know, and we criminalized it. And the colonizers made money. Because after they closed sugar, or even when we were doing the sugar, they were also manufacturing rum. And we had our, you know, distillers in the villages, or very creative distillers who came up with Hammond, and we criminalized it while other people benefited from it. So those experiences for community tourism can only benefit our people, and ultimately that's what we want, our people to benefit from the industry.
Right. And as we speak about the other industries that would benefit from the tourism sector itself now, how do you see tourism acting as a catalyst to stimulate growth in other sectors? And I'm going to mention two in particular. And of course, there's more you can add as well. But particularly agriculture.
I know, you were going to say that, yes.
And also the creative economy.
Absolutely.
Because, of course, this is a very big focus for the government in terms of creative expression.
Right, and so we continue to work together. We have a lot of interministerial collaborations amongst the ministries. For example, we have the Eco Park. It's managed by the Ministry of Tourism, but maintained by the Ministry of Agriculture. And so we see the collaboration. They're responsible for getting the plants, making sure the farm is in good condition. And then there's also the opportunities for our local farmers to supply hotels, restaurants, benefit from the tourism industry. Similarly, in the creative economy, when we put our masquerades, or on the music festival, we expose our local artists, putting them on the world stage for the music festival, and all the other things we do together. So tourism is multi-sectoral, and we appreciate that. I think we make the conscious efforts to make sure that, you know, tourism alone doesn't benefit, but all the other sectors as well.
And there's so many aspects for creative expression. I know the masquerades and the clowns have always been very popular, but most of the masquerades, we would have seen them being involved in two very significant celebrations that the ministry would have had. One of them, of course, would have been our celebration for the 20th anniversary of American Airlines, which we're going to talk about in just a bit, and also when there was a launch for the tourism, the cruise season officially that the tourism had.
And our visitors love it.
And they were even prominently featured when the Minister of Foreign Affairs, so Taiwan, came to St. Kitts. They were performed and welcomed him at the airport.
Yes, that is usually our greeting for our visitors, where the masquerades come and display. And of course, we will continue to look at other ways we can use our local, folklore and all of that. But for now, we use the masquerades, and our visitors love it. They embrace it. They're mesmerized. They dance with them. And similarly, when we had, interestingly, the State of the Industry Conference, they brought some guys who were on the banjo, playing the fife and singing all these, old-time songs.
The string band.
The string band.
Right.
I was taken back. And that is what people come here for. People come here for that. I mean, what we have the sun, we have the sea, we have beaches. All other destinations have that as well. So we're all called sun destinations. But what makes us different? It's our food, it's our culture, it's our masquerades, our stories, how we live, where we come from, why we eat black pudding, how we ended up eating sauce, because we took the scraps, while the plantation owners took the leaner parts of the meat, and we took the snout and we make cook up. We took the intestines and make black pudding. We took pigtail and grilled it. So people are fascinated by those things, and that's why they come. They come for that reason, because they can get the beach in Jamaica, Probably better beaches, even though I would differ. But we have an authentic product, and that's what people come here for.
And that's where the collaboration with the Ministry of Creative Economy
Right.
comes in terms of ensuring that persons are involved
And culture
they're
as well.
properly trained as well, so that they can tell these stories and,
Right.
and sell and further develop the product here in St. Kitts and Nevis.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Okay. Minister, we're up against the clock now. We're going to take our first break, and when we come back, we're going to delve into a bit more of what the BREA report says.
Okay, sounds good.
We'll be right back with more In Focus. Welcome back to In Focus. We continue our discussion with the Minister of Tourism, the Honorable Marsha Henderson. Minister, before we took the break, of course, we spoke about the BREA research, and would just to ensure that persons understand what it is. It stands for the Business Research and Economic Advisor Report. Right. And as you mentioned, it was commissioned by the FCCA
Correct.
Out of Florida, and of course, it's an independent report. There was no influence in terms of any governments throughout the region. So it also noted, Minister, as we spoke about the cruise tourism earlier, that the stayover visitors, the arrivals at the end of September 2024, that would be this year, of course, was 118,574.
Okay, so that data did not come from the BREA report.
Okay.
That is from our exit surveys at the airport. So BREA report deals only with cruise tourism.
Right, okay.
So the stayover reports, the stayover statistics are generated by the Department of Statistics along with tourism and immigration when we collect the exit surveys at the airports.
Right.
So yes, that sounds accurate though.
Right. And so that was up. The number that I mentioned, 118,574, was up from 97,460.
Right.
Now that represents a 21% increase. What strategies are working to drive these numbers?
Right. So when we started, we had to have a plan, and one of the objectives is to make St. Kitts a year-round destination, meaning instead of having seasons where the winter season starts in November and ends in April, and then we have a slow season, what we wanted to do is to drive visitors to the destination throughout the year. So what we had to do was increased airlift, meaning add additional carriers to the existing carriers. So we have the usual legacy carriers like American Airlines and Delta and Air Canada, all those who come during the traditional up season. What we had to do though was extend the season beyond May, meaning instead of November to April, we then extend the season from November to November. We're not there yet though. But what we managed to do was to have visitors and an influx of visitors. If you look at the comparison, you would see that even when we call what the slow season is, that is May, June, July, August, you saw an influx of visitors. And that is because we made a conscious effort to invest in airlift. We introduced additional lift through JetBlue and an extension of the period for the existing carriers. So American Airlines and United, Delta, they extended their service beyond March up until August. We, of course, had to generate, in terms of strategy, generate activity within the destination so that there is a demand. So stimulate demand for the destination. So things like the music festival, which was created back then, over 25 years, was created just for that. CPL, Restaurant Week, all the nice things, the sexy things we have during the summer, what we call the summer of fun, is a part of the strategy to drive people to the destination during that slow period. So two things: increase lift, so by extending the service of our legacy carriers to beyond May and hopefully up to November, so it could be year-round. And in addition to that, introducing new lift, whether it's regional, such as Sunrise,
Inter-Caribbean,
and all the others, and as well as the international lift. So
right.
That is what has accounted for the increase.
And Liat also is back in the air.
Yes.
Okay. And of course, you have to factor in as well to that Winair also, they have a larger fleet of planes now.
They do.
As well, so that they're able to service more customers who are wishing to come to St. Kitts and Nevis. So, Minister, the investment that was made, it's paying off.
It is. I'm happy to report, Ian, that it is. Not just the investment in airlifts, but also the investment in marketing and promotion. Because for us, we can't just introduce lift, otherwise we'll have planes coming empty. They'll come with those empty seats, which would mean nothing. So for us to fill those seats, we have to promote the destination. We have to raise the visibility of St. Kitts and Nevis, of course. And so when people say, oh, the minister or the team is always out, I keep saying it, and I don't know if people take it the wrong way. But if we stay in our little corner of the world, who is going to know about us? How would they even know we exist? How would they know we have the lovely beaches, the best food, our rich culture? That's where our money goes, into marketing and promotion. And that is what fills the seats. And those seats have been those flights have been coming, filled to capacity.
And persons who are looking at us on either television or watching online would have just seen some pictures from the celebrations that was recently held between American Airlines and the government of St. Kitts and Nevis. We're celebrating 20 years of service since the flight from Miami was first introduced here in St. Kitts and Nevis. And also JetBlue.
Right.
There's an anniversary coming up, 1 year.
We celebrated it last week, one-year anniversary. So we had representatives from JetBlue at the State of the Industry Conference as well. So we think they're significant milestones and worthy of celebrating.
Right. I was just going to ask that. Why these celebrations? Because JetBlue is only 1 year, American Airlines 20 years,
Right. And so for JetBlue, traditionally when you start a route in flying, it doesn't usually perform as well as JetBlue performed during its first year. So we started ambitiously with 3 days, Sunday, Tuesdays and Thursdays for the flight. So we had it 3 times. And we did exceptionally well up until what we call the slow months. So if you were observing, you would see during the months of September and now October, well, we are now in November, the Tuesday flight was pulled just for those 2 months. And that's because we have to maximize our investment. Those flights were not coming, failed on Tuesday. People like the opportunity of coming on the Thursday, back out on the Sunday. But the flight generally did well all 3 days in its first year on the route from JFK to St. Kitts. And that is worth celebrating. Our partners at JetBlue said they were amazed at how we performed on the route. And so we thought it was worthy of celebrating and just celebrating our partnership, with our international partners as well.
And American?
Oh, and American. There's some discussion because I was contacted by one person, I won't even say their name, to say that American Airlines was flying even before that. But there was service. You remember we had what we used to call the Eagle?
Yes, American Eagle.
Yes, and you remember we used to kill up ourselves to go Sang One.
Yes.
Until, but our partners at American Airlines did confirm that, the service, and they were here on the grounds as well to celebrate with us. So it's significant for us, consistent service, and like American, we started with an MRG. We don't have an MRG with American, and the flights are coming filled to capacity.
That would be a minimum revenue guarantee,
right,
where seats that are not filled, essentially they will be covered to ensure that the airline remains profitable for them to fly into the destination.
Correct.
Right. And so you're saying that the government has not had to pay any of that for American?
We don't have one in place with them for a number of years.
And that's okay. That's interesting.
And I'm sure long before I even became the minister. So those flights have been just, sustaining themselves. And you understand, if they were not, they'd pull them. So.
And you also mentioned, Minister, the introduction of Cape Air, which would help to benefit as well to persons who use the JetBlue service. Right.
So there are 2 things. Every day somebody would call, Marsha, we want service from St. Thomas. What you're doing for the people in St. Thomas. And so we negotiated with our partners at Cape Air to give us service from St. Thomas to St. Kitts. Because there's service from St. Thomas to Nevis. But people like the convenience of coming directly, flying directly. And so we're happy with that. But what is even better, which is icing on the cake, because Cape Air code shares with JetBlue. If it is, you're flying from Boston, and that's one of the markets we are actually pursuing. We are looking for travelers coming out of, that's our biggest source market in the Northeast. So we're looking at travelers coming out of Boston now, and people who feeder markets as well. So people who feed into the Boston airports to travel here, they can fly from Boston to St. Kitts. So if you put it in the system, you would get a flight from Boston to St. Kitts. Of course, because of the code sharing, they'll go through St. Martin and get here to St. Kitts. So it's easier, and that's what travelers are looking for. They don't want to know, well, I had to sleep over here, I had to do this, you know. So it makes the whole experience easier for persons coming here.
And while there are the strategies that are clearly working to boost the numbers of persons coming in to stay over arrivals, as we call them, the question will be asked, and how are we working to upgrade the infrastructure to welcome passengers and other persons here to St. Kitts?
That's a really good question, because we've actually outgrown the footprint of the airports. And we need money, one. We need a new terminal. We're actually in discussions. But in the meantime, if you were following the press conference, what we did with our sister agency at SCASPA, and of course immigration, is to improve the experience at the airport. So it's important. People want to know when they get in, they come out immediately. So the kiosk is there. You go up, you scan your passports, you come downstairs. And I don't even want to announce, we're working on some other things in terms of coming through customs and being able to just leave without having to stay and, you know, go through, because that is what affects the experience. You come up from upstairs quickly, downstairs you're in a long line, or we need to make sure the ACs are working. You know, it's cool that there's no long line. You come through, even if it's a small space, you come through, you're processed, and you're out. So for now, the kiosk is helping upstairs with immigration. Downstairs, we're partnering with customs. They're doing some work now in terms of profiling and what they should be looking for. So just like other destinations where and we're putting things in place, like the API, we're going to Parliament on Friday, and you're going to hear about all these nice things. The passenger...
Advanced passenger information system. Right.
Those things help with the experience at the airport. So a lot of times what you don't necessarily need is a big airport. You need an efficient and functional airport. So if we have systems like these in place, our immigration and customs can be able to assess passengers, profile them, and determine who's of interest. The others can just walk. Those things help. So those are the things we are working on to improve, not necessarily infrastructure, because the infrastructure is coming. We're in discussions on planning the second terminal. But in the meantime, if you enhance the visitor experience at the airports, that makes a big difference. So we started with immigration. There's no long line. You just put in your passport, swipe it, go downstairs. If you're not of interest to customs, you can leave. If you are, you go to them. And those things help. And once the AC working, the conveyor belt working, those are the things.
And the elevator for myself
and the elevator,
in particular,
of course, right. Yes.
Okay. And so in terms of the upgrade for the terminal, a timeline, I imagine it's a long-term project, of course. Anything that you care to share that is in the advanced development? You said discussions. What are you looking at?
To be fair, I am not at liberty to say, because we are actually operating under certain agreements, and we're not at liberty to say. But I can say that our discussions are progressing, and we are likely to get it sometime soon. Okay. At least start.
And there also were moves inside the airport terminal itself to relocate some areas, immigration, I think you mentioned. There were the restaurant as well, do I understand?
Right. All those things are happening because we have to accommodate our partners. Like Cape Airline, we had to find counter space for them, for JetBlue, and, you know, so we're just tweaking the space, and we've created additional space thanks to the competent staff at SCASPA. They're doing an excellent job with the limited resources we have to ensure that our passengers and, of course, our tenants and those who visit the airport have the best experience. Okay.
Minister, we jump to cruise tourism now, and that is where I would have heard in terms of referring to the BREA research. But I just wanted to mention as well, to one of the things that you pointed out at the press conference that we referred to earlier, was that St. Kitts and Nevis is poised to welcome over 1 million visitors based on ship capacity. Right. Talk to us about that development.
Right, and that's a big accomplishment for us. based on the calls, I think we're scheduled to have 391 calls.
That's correct.
We anticipate in excess of 1 million visitors. Of course, pending, barring cancellations. That is significant. Those were the figures before COVID. And if I might say, and I don't even want to go this route, but the figures before COVID actually reflected they were not actually booked calls. Before COVID, what we had were 2 hurricanes that impacted destinations that resulted in calls being diverted to St. Kitts. And we were grateful. I mean, we don't want to benefit off of other people's misfortune, but we were able to get calls that were scheduled to St. Martin and Dominica. So they were not originally scheduled. With this season, these calls are actually scheduled. Nonetheless, and I'm not playing politics, this is not the time for it, but I was just making the comparison that these are actually booked calls and we may, God forbid, if we are impacted by a hurricane, lose those calls like the other destinations. And so that was the case in prior to COVID, how we ended up with 1 million passengers. But we are grateful whether they are actually booked or otherwise. So for us, it's significant in that regard.
No, another key statistic was visitor spend.
Right.
Minister, and that
Absolutely.
was also listed in the Bureau report. Now, it's up from US $135 to $145. And that figure goes back to 135 to 2018. It was
right. So that's also before COVID.
Right.
So and remember, this study is just from October 2023 to March, I think, 2024. So during that period, we were able to increase the visitor spend. And that is one of our objectives. Outside of numbers, we want passengers who are with high spending. So our aim is to get, and we are like maybe, if you look, I shared the report with you, we're maybe like the 4th in terms of passenger spend. I think St. Martin comes in at number 1, and I'm like, I'm not even going to say what I want to say, but we are at 145. It would be good per passenger. US, that is. That's not even easy.
Right.
And that's a $10 increase. So ultimately, our aim is to set a product that allows us to get high spending passengers. And so we are trying to attract out of luxury vessels where, we have persons who are able to spend and spend well.
Right. And so the numbers that you just mentioned, the St. Kitts is ranked 3rd in the top 10 of destinations behind the USVA
yes.
and also St. Martin.
Yes.
And when you include home ports, then that's when we're 4th.
4th, correct.
Right. So, Minister, what is driving the recovery of these numbers from COVID-19?
One, good partnership. And that is absolutely important in tourism. I've found, it's new to me, but I found that people value partnership. And one small thing could fracture a relationship. So one of the most important things for us is maintaining good relationships with our partners, whether partners and otherwise. That's one. 2 is a specific and intentional focus on product development. So we launched the Venture Deeper campaign. It resonated not with our visitors, but even our stakeholders who understood that we were selling a product that requires us to make sure that our visitors understand that we have an immersive type experience here in St. Kitts. And that's what people want. So the tours, the taxi operators, and I want to take this opportunity to commend them as well. They're partnering with us in this journey. So they understand that we have to forever work on the product, make sure the product is relevant and it's fresh. So what we did in 2012, we need to be doing something different now to make sure that we attract those people. So we have to stay looking at the trends. So I think it's a number of things, like I said, good relationships with industry partners, a conscious effort on product development, and working with our stakeholders to make sure that they deliver when people come to our shores. So when they come, they just say, oh, Brimstone Hill, up the hill, go up there and see where you want to go. Mm-hmm. Continuous training and making our people aware during times like Tourism Awareness Month, where we invest in our stakeholders, So those things, I think, they are what contributes to the increase.
Right. Okay. And now, as you mentioned in terms of some of the numbers that were shared in the report in terms of persons purchasing and where the money is being used for in terms of show excursions, and of course that's where you talk about keeping it fresh.
Right.
But it also, Minister, would include, as you mentioned, the stores on Port Zante,
Yes.
as well to others who are offering their products for sale, that they must be up to a proper standard.
Right.
What strategies are there in place to ensure that? Because ultimately, if you are buying goods that are not what you expect, it can severely damage the product.
Right. So we have at the St. Kitts Tourism Authority product inspectors, and we also introduced it into the ministry. We haven't built out the roles as yet, but the St. Kitts Tourism Authority, they have inspectors who are responsible for making sure, whether it's at our national sites, where crews are dispatched, whether jobs are dispatched, whether at the airports, Port Zante, our inspectors go around to make sure that our stakeholders are complying. Similarly, we want to introduce within the ministry inspectors who make sure the product is up to standard. So we can do inspections at Port Zante. There are a number of, and this might not be the time to talk about it, but we have issues that we want to look at in terms of the authenticity of the products we sell there, the authenticity of experiences and services we sell. So our product inspectors work with us in the ministry to ensure that the product is what we want it to be.
Okay. And Minister, let's talk a bit now about the start of the season. Recently, we saw that there were some new features added to make it a bit more exciting for persons who are coming off of this cruise ship. Tell us about that, what came about in terms of where did the idea come from and feedback from visitors as well too.
Right, so when we go to meet with our industry partners as the cruise lines, and it came out in the Brea report as well, that when visitors come, they're not staying long enough on shore. And sometimes when I go down to the shore or the cruise terminal, I see myself. A visitor should not come off the ship and is back on in an hour. And we are seeing that. So the Brea report shows that passengers are spending an average time of 4 hours on shore. Why? It means they may not be interested in what's happening. Some of them like to be close to where they can see the ship. You want to know you're all the way down in Black Rocks and you hear the horn or the ship gonna leave you. So generally at some point in time, our visitors want to be close to where they can see the ship. And they want an authentic experience. So when we went, what our partners are saying, this is a strain on them. If you're in ports, meaning you're berthed and you're there, you expect your passengers to be off and that, the resources on board are not strained. So people don't rush back on to eat the food and, the towels, you have to be washing them because people on board are using them. The expectation is that when the ship is in port, the passengers are shore excursions, walking around, taking the burden off of the cruise lines. But that's not happening. And of course, that would be of concern to them. That might mean they will consider another destination and pull us from their itinerary. So we had to come up with creative ways of making sure that people stay on shore when the ships are there. What are they looking for when they're on shore? Food. They ain't gonna come here and want a hamburger. Cause hamburger on the ship, I tell you, I went on one for the summer and it's hamburger galore. I got fed up. But we are not a hamburger or chicken and chips destination. So they get that on board. Why do we offer that on shore? What are they looking for? They want the grilled lobster, the grilled chicken. You see how they were feasting over the dumpling and saltfish, the cook-up. They want what we eat. They find it exotic. So we offer that experience at Port Zante. Other than just having a bar where you could drink a beer, there has to be more to keep our people, to keep the visitors on shore. And if we don't keep them on shore, they go back on board, it's no benefit to the cruise lines. And so we understood that, went back to the drawing board and came up with this idea to have a cultural explosion. Yes, we do understand that things must be done with our partners at Port Zante. We did some consultations, and of course there's always room for, to address concerns. So we think that is a good way to keep people on the shore, and local music where they could dance and all of that. So that is one of the ways we find outside of Port Zante, even, other cruises, other tours, forgive me, and other things in downtown Bastille or wherever, to make sure that they're not staying 4 hours on shore and then back on. They're in port for maybe like 8.
Right.
So.
And some of them are even staying longer. Sometimes you see ships leaving in the night.
Right,
actually.
right. And they were here last season. They were leaving like 10 o'clock and we were shut down by 5.
Yes.
Shut down by 5. The place black, Port Zante dead, downtown dead, and a lot of calls we got on Sundays too. Nobody in town but the tourists. So we really need to go back, and I think it requires a cultural shift, how we think and how we see things. But we continue to work with our stakeholders to address these issues.
And feedback from persons who participated in the explosion?
Yes, we played a video. We had some of them said they never saw this. One lady said, I was in Antigua and I didn't get this. They loved it. They stayed there. Even the crew came off. They came off, they heard the music, saw the festivities, and a number of and they spend on shore as well. It's not just the passenger, but crew expenditure as well was maybe like $8 million last year. So. And
so in the tie-in, Minister, because a lot of the persons who were there grilling, they came from the ministry's grill fest that happened during the summer of fun that you mentioned. So there's a tie-in there too.
Right. So they partnered with us, participated in the grill fest, and we thought this was a good way to use them as well.
Okay. Earlier you spoke about how tourism fits into the sustainable island state, and we want to delve a bit more in terms of the sustainability aspects of tourism. And so we're going to take our final break and have that discussion.
Okay.
We'll be right back with more InFocus.
If you haven't done it as yet, please do it today. Subscribe to our YouTube page at SKNIS Media for regular updates, live coverage, and even more information on your government. While you're at it, like, share, and interact with our Facebook and Instagram pages at SKNIS Media and SKNIS Info.
Welcome back to InFocus. We continue our discussion with the Minister responsible for tourism, the Honorable Marsha Henderson. Now, Minister, one of the also key points that came out at the press conference was a number of awards that St. Kitts and Nevis would have received last year, including the Magellan Awards, the Carib Journal Award as well. But all of them were linked to sustainable aspects of it. How do these awards help to not necessarily vindicate, but advance the government strategy of you're on the right track with sustainability? It's something that is very important to persons as they travel. How does that help?
Right, and we are seeing as well here on more conscious travelers. People are conscious of the environment we live in and our responsibility as citizens in this world. So we are particularly proud of these awards because it aligns with our overall mandates for sustainability, not just as an island, but in the industry. And so these awards are significant for us. We are absolutely sure that we need to be embarking on, and the awards are there from the World Travel Awards.
Right. Well, for those who are listening, let me just run through them quickly. Carib Journal, we have Green Destination of the Year. It's the Magellan Awards, which was the overall destination eco-friendly.
Yes.
And the World Travel Awards that you just mentioned, it would be the Caribbean's leading dive destination.
Which means we're doing a good job at preserving even our wrecks under the ocean. And so it's significant for us because we have our own role to play in transitioning into a sustainable island state in tourism. So we are encouraging our stakeholders and visitors to embark on sustainable practices, whether it's the hoteliers, like last year, Sunset Reef won most sustainable property within the region, and that was significant for us as well. We are encouraging our stakeholders and even the government to embark on sustainable practices. At Pier 1 down at Port Zante, we have the capability to provide shore power to our cruise lines. And that is something that's being mandated now by IMO, which is the International Maritime Organization, that cruise lines are to turn off when they're in ports. And they can plug into our shore power. Right now, it's not possible. We have the capabilities, but we need to find alternative forms of energy to supply the capacity there. And interestingly, I don't know if you know, Ian, we were selected by IMO to do the pilot project for wind turbine at our ports. So that as well, I think people are recognizing that we're serious about sustainability. And so we, amongst 4 other destinations, 2 in the Caribbean, which was Trinidad and us, Mauritius, and I think another destination, was selected by IMO for pilot projects for the introduction of, alternative forms of clean energy to support the industry. And so soon we should be able to, whether it's through solar, geothermal, wind energy, the capacity to provide shore power would become a reality. We can't do it on the grid because you know what would happen to us. So we are endeavoring strategically and consciously to make sure that the industry is sustainable, because sustainability means resilience. So
the wind turbine project,
yes.
How advanced is that? Has the areas been identified where they can be
Yes.
mounted?
Right. So they were here earlier and they're working. This was done through our maritime department, and I want to big up Wayne Edmead, our director, wherever you are. Wayne, big you up. But he went and advocated for us, and the team came from IMO. It's being powered through this company called SIGTech. That's SYGTECH, SIGTech, and they were on the grounds earlier this year, maybe about 6 months ago, looking at potential sites. I think we agreed on one, and they're going to start at the cargo port with extension to the cruise port. So.
And that speaks to Minister why it's so important to drive renewable energy here in St. Kitts and Nevis. Of course, the IMF was featured in the report as well, too, that the economy would be, I think the term they used was a game changer.
Yes.
That renewable energy poses a game changer for development here in St. Kitts and Nevis. Of course, there is the solar project that is being
Right.
pursued by the government, and geothermal as well in Nevis, because
Right.
the connectivity
Right.
would be between both islands.
Correct. And even at the airport, we have a solar farm that's non-functional, but we think, as the IMF has suggested, that it would be a game changer in terms of operational costs and our overall responsibility to sustainability.
Efforts are being made to repair that solar farm at the airport?
Yes, we said it last budget, and we're actually in discussions. But through the Ministry of Energy, led by Minister Maynard, there are some other options that may not require us to put the farm back.
Okay. Minister, talk to us a bit now, as you mentioned, of course, the Glasgow Declaration on Climate Change as well, too. The Prime Minister has been one who, and of course, Minister responsible for climate change, Dr. Joya Clark. So Prime Minister, the Honorable Terence Drew, and Dr. Clark, they've been really passionate in terms of ensuring that the international community realizes how small island developing states like St. Kitts and Nevis are being impacted. The Prime Minister calls it the scourge
Right.
of climate change, and agreeing to declarations, international declarations such as these. Talk to us about how that could enhance tourism here in St. Kitts and Nevis. Because, of course, one of the things that the Prime Minister always mentions is Koi. He uses this as a perfect example. They're no longer a beach resort.
Yes, and I was amazed. We have the core initiative. So for us, it's just as the Honorable Prime Minister leads the mandate along with Dr. Clark, the Honorable Minister, we think that it would only enhance the industry. We talk about hotels like Koi. Climate, we need to make sure that we're making the right decisions now. I remember sitting with my son and we talked about what sustainability means. It was an exam question for him in grade 6, and I was like, wow, this is amazing. And he says, his definition was our actions today, making sure what we do today affects generations to come. And that's the simple way of putting what sustainability is. What we do today, make sure what we're doing today makes life easier for my grandchildren, generations to come. That's what sustainability is. So we're introducing a plastic cup, and when the government is pushing the ban on single-use plastic.
Right.
If we continue, we ain't gonna sink Kitts and Nevis. We ain't gonna the ocean. The fish would die. They would suffocate if we don't change up how we use energy. Climates are going to rise. I sometimes think that we're not going to be able to habit St. Kitts and Nevis. If the temperature gets too hot in 40 years, we might have to abandon here. I mean, so we must take...
That's if the island is not covered in water.
Right, because the
sea level rise.
Sea level rising as well. So we must be mindful that what we do today impacts. And some people might say, well, I ain't gonna be alive, so I ain't here. But that must not be the attitude. And I think the government is on the right track, because for us in tourism, it means we won't have a destination to sell. Outside of somewhere to live, we won't have a destination to sell. So.
And so are there any support or incentives that the government is offering to stakeholders to embrace the sustainable island state agenda and to transform their offerings and their operations?
Right, so there are a number of incentives through the forms of concession, whether it's in tourism or otherwise. There are grants for persons, looking to embark on sustainable practices and all the other nice things. But the right person to talk to about this might be the Honorable Prime Minister. But I know that in tourism, for example, we are partnered with hoteliers, and if they're going to be building, we have a major hotel that's coming next year. I'm not going to say who. They want to break ground, but we met with them. They understand what we mean when we say a sustainable island state. We are making it business friendly, making sure we're offering the right concessions to make sure that they understand as well that we want them and all the other stakeholders in tourism and otherwise to partner with this government on this journey.
Now, Minister, of course, you can have all of the best facilities and you can have all of the best products to sell, but the people are very important as well too.
Right.
Talk to us a bit about efforts to prepare persons to get involved in terms of the tourism sector and how they can really enhance and transform. I believe that there are a number of trainings that will be taking place during this month.
Pioneers of the industry, we are calling it. We believe, and I'm also the Minister of Labour and Employment, so we believe in building capacity. So outside of that, we are hoping to have a hospitality institute. We are commencing the implementation of that. What we have now is a division at the Clarence Fitzroy Bryant College, and we bring out like 40 students, some in culinary and some in hospitality, but the industry is wider than that. And so outside of preparing our people, I think we need to educate our people on what is required for the industry. We have aviation, which is a big thing. We have maritime. We have engineering. We have planners. We have policy, all in tourism. But what people see is the taxi operator, they see the hair braider, they see those who sell the souvenirs. But for the industry to thrive, there is actually more than that. So we feel educating our people on careers in tourism is one, and making sure that we have the mechanism and infrastructure in place to generate, the human capital required for the industry. One of the questions when I met with the potential hotel, the developer for the hotel, they asked, where are we going to get the people from to work in this hotel? Can't be what we're pushing out from CFBC. We might have to import people, not while I'm the minister. I gave the commitment that this government is going to make sure that our people are ready for whatever the industry brings. So we are hoping to roll out the Hospitality Institute. I just left a meeting, we were discussing it, but you would hear more on it. And
there was also a partnership with the FCCA, I think, as a
yes.
person. So tell us a bit about that.
So FCCA also is partnering with a number of its members, destinations, to prepare people, but their focus is usually cruise.
Of course.
Yes, so, and they give you the opportunity, not just FCCA, but Carnival, they were here on the grounds, and Royal, a number of the cruise lines, to expose our people to careers in cruise tourism. So there's also scholarships from FCCA as well in the different areas, maritime and otherwise.
Okay. Minister, we're just about out of time for our program. So
Can you imagine? We were just having a really good conversation.
A final opportunity to speak to persons.
Yes, I want to thank all the stakeholders of the industry, all of us in St. Kitts and Nevis, because ultimately we're all ambassadors for the destination. But I want to encourage everyone to support the activities for Tourism Awareness Month. There must be something for you. We had the yoga Serenity at Sunset. We had a really good yoga session at Eco Park, which focused on wellness tourism. We have different niches, and there must be something for everybody. So I want to encourage you all to support the activities for this month, and remember that we are ambassadors for this destination. So when our visitors are here, give them the best experience, whether it's a good morning, Ian, or welcome to St. Kitts, or, you know, something nice. So thank you very much for all the support for the industry and for our stakeholders, ultimately the people who benefit from this industry.
Minister of Tourism, the Honorable Marsha Henderson, thank you very much for being with us here today on InFocus, and we certainly, come the new year, would love to have you back. Of course, there will be another increase in the minimum wage.
Yes.
Of course, to $500. You're the Minister of Labor, as you mentioned, so
Yes.
we'd want to talk about that and the impact it's having on persons here in St. Kitts and Nevis.
Definitely.
Right. So thank you very much, Minister. And we'd like to
Thank you.
thank you, viewers and listeners, for joining us for this edition of InFocus. We trust that you will join us next week for another edition. I'm Ian Richards.
Join us every Wednesday for InFocus, a weekly talk show produced by the St. Kitts Nevis Information Service, where we provide exclusives with key persons within the government and discuss pertinent, relevant, and interesting matters that affect us all. Tune in every Wednesday, live on ZIZ Radio and streamed live on Facebook at SKNIS Media and ZIZ Online. InFocus, your government, your business.